Traumatic moments can, if they're strong enough, can cause us to stop breathing, whether they're physical or emotional traumas, and we stop breathing in that moment, and that moment gets trapped in the body. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Minke. This is Minke Wellness. We're going to talk about working through some of these past trauma moments using breath, okay? Because the trauma got stuck in our body through the breath system in the first place. Breath is one of the most powerful ways we can re-engage and sort of restart and reset from those past traumas. It doesn't really matter what it is, and I'm not advocating in this context to be trying to dig up and relive and rehash and reprocess those traumatic moments. All I'm suggesting we do at this point is kind of go back to that time and breathe for ourselves in the past. We can use essential oils to help help us engage in that process, and I find that to be a very supportive way to go back and work on something in the past. So, what are these traumas, and how exactly is this look? And then we'll do a little bit of this breathing. You're going to have to use your own judgment on this in terms of how far or how deep you want to go, and how much support you feel like you need, or when to stop, or any of that kind of stuff. This is a mental / physical exercise, but it can be a very real cleansing and clearing process, which I think is a good thing. But I just want you to understand that we are kind of working into areas that if you need to go and get some help, professional counseling help to process something, then there's no shame in that. That would be fine. So anyway, right here let's start. So what are these traumas? Anything that can be a physical blow, a car accident, something that jolts the body, a fall or impact injury. Certainly, if it had a lot of emotional trauma with it, being beaten by someone, hit by someone, physically assaulted, those are going to also have, not only do they have the physical component of getting the breath trapped, having us stop breathing, but then we've got that other component of an interpersonal trauma and engage with that. Fear in general. A moment of surprise and fear, we inhale and then stop. If we were afraid right before an impact, like we saw the car accident about to happen, and then bam, right? So right when I inhale to hit the thing, and then all the shear forces come ripping through, the whiplash and all. So there's a lot of physical trauma that can be wrapped around a layer that was stuck at the moment of inhale, or so the impact happened at a certain point in phase in the breath. At that point, then, whether that's a physical, whether it's a physical thing or an emotional source, the source of the trauma is not necessarily what we're worried about, but that moment in the breath can become something that, because we breathe all the time, 20,000 times a day, every time I breathe through that, if I haven't actually let it go, I'm sitting there with a low grade, sort of emotional trauma or fear that's continually running on a low grade background and just eroding our internal confidence, our internal sense of safety, and we're getting this constant issue going on. So I like to look at these things that are eroding our health and wellness slowly, that we are not aware of, and start getting rid of these things and start getting a fundamental increase in our wellness. Can think of this as like those, when we do a financial program, when you start looking at your spending and you realize there's $5 a month going out over here and $10 a month going out over here, and these slow leaks of money, and you don't think about that as a big deal at the moment, and maybe it's not, but you start adding up all those things, and all of a sudden you're spending $200 a month on stupid stuff that you didn't even, that's not what you intended. And wow, how nice it would be to have $200 a month that you save up over and you get a $2,000 Christmas bonus. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about in the wellness category, that we can start to work on these things. It's worth looking into this. I'm not trying to make up any trauma. So please, if you have never had any trauma in your life and you've always breathed easy, then this is probably not your lesson for you. Okay, so let's go. We're going to use some oils, and I've got my trusty release oil here that can help me again release these things, and as I work through them. There are other oils, of course. Young Living has an amazing arsenal of essential oils that are designed for emotional and to help us with mood and different components of that. And so we have oils that with different names like gratitude or awaken, forgiveness, present time. There's just in the names, of course, can relate to. We can use those and relate them to whatever supportive fashion we want. If I'm looking to be in the moment, then present time would be good. If I'm looking to live with passion, then hey, live with passion would be a good oil. Awaken, if I really want to awaken myself. So gratitude. Any of these oils are fabulous. I'm gonna, because we've talked about this for the moment, for this month is release. We're focused on that. So if you have a specific moment that you know of in particular that was a trauma moment, we can go straight to that moment and breathe for ourselves back at that moment. If you don't have any particular thing or you don't want to go there, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just go, you could do an entire breath regression. In other words, you go back to yourself in utero, in the womb, and breathe for yourself, and then breathe for yourself at birth, because birth trauma was probably, all birth is somewhat traumatic. And then breathe for ourselves at 1 years old and 2 years old and 3 years old and 4 years old. And I can go through my whole life and do a little breath series of breathing for myself at those times, and making sure I'm clearing and having a good deep breath for all of that. And that's useful in the sense that if we do have a trauma that happens, let's say it happened at 2 years old, I fell down the stairs and my body was impacted. Well, from that point forward, I grow around that wound or that restriction pattern. I don't get rid of it. If it never gets worked out, I just grow around it. So it's useful to go back to that moment when it actually happened and work on breathing through that. And then let your body unwind. This is an advanced concept I'm just giving for some of you who may be already advanced in this way or coming back to these videos and watching them again for more content. This is something you could do on your own. Maybe I'll do a video where we do a full regression, but I'm not too worried about that right now. Again, so I'm just going to go ahead start with the release oil to prepare myself. And sometimes if I'm scared, I don't even want to get into this or something, I might use something like Valor or grounding or any of those emotional type oils. But I'm going to go ahead with my release oil. I'm going to just put a couple 3 drops and inhale that. I don't know if you know, but the emotional points are on the ears, auricular therapy. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of cover my ears with the release oil. And so I'm ready to do some breathing. So as I inhale and again, feel my breath volume, feel my lungs, I'm going to ask my body in listening breath and I don't even need an image, I don't need anything. I'm just going to say, okay, if there's a restriction in breathing that's connected to a trauma, then I want to go to that point, okay? And so I'm going to breathe in as listening breath, and I'm going to, as just to get us a connection, so that maybe I'll just call it a connecting breath. Get back into the lungs. Now I'm going to go in as a listening breath and ask my body, okay, if there's a trauma in there, can you show me the where in the lung, where in the respiratory process that I experienced that trauma? I'm not asking for the trauma. I'm not going to relive it. I'm not trying to do that. I just want to know if there's a restriction and allow my body to manifest that for me in either in imagery or in physical, and then I can start to breathe through that and let it go. So, so I'm going to do a listening breath into my respiratory system and work and ask for any of those restrictions. And I might actually find that my body actually rotates around, so I have a very clear restriction up here in the front. It causes me to rotate around. So now that I have identified in the sense of a restriction to my breathing that's connected to a past issue, I'm going to allow the release, with the help of the release oil and the breathing and the grace of God to come through me, and I'm just going to go ahead and let that go. So I'm going to breathe into this restricted area. Now I'm going to breathe love and healing and forgiveness and release oil into this front of the sternum in here. And I might take 5-10 breaths to do that. And again, I'm putting my hand where it feels restricted, and I feel the pain, and I feel the tension, and I can feel it up my spine and all the rest of it. So I'm gonna just go in and take a few breaths to allow that to soak in. Now, here's where the breath cycle, I don't know if you go way back to maybe the first week, I talked about breath cycle where we inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Here's where that pause can really be powerful. I'm going to breathe in and just pause and let that intention soak in and give it time, and spend a little bit of time. Be brave enough to pause in that moment and go, okay, everything's okay. And I'm gonna use my brain in there. I'm gonna tell myself it's okay. Whatever that trauma was, it's okay now. We're clear of it. We're safe. We're in this wonderful life I have now. So inhaling love, light, peace, forgiveness, healing, and then pause right at the top of that breath. And again, I'm not holding my breath, just to be clear. I'm not closing the airway. I'm not holding my breath. I'm just not breathing anymore. I inhale to the near max point, and then I let it pause. So I could keep inhaling just a little bit more. I usually stop right before my absolute max inhale, and I just pause. I just let it be open, and so my airway is still open. It's very, very important in this context to keep the airway open. We're not trapping new stuff into the respiratory system. I want to keep everything very open and flowing. I'm going to do that one more time, and I'll walk through it. So I'm going to inhale, pause, let it soak in, exhale, pause, inhale. Okay, so that pause moment allows that to soak in. This is so fast. I wish we could do a lot more, but I know it's hard to do more than a 10 to 15 minute video. So this is just an example. It's something that you could work on, and it's not something you have to finish. It's not you're not gonna finish any of this today, but it's a technique that you can use when you come across it. A lot of times the body will not reveal something unless you're prepared, unless you have the resources to deal with it. So as you go through the healing process and you unload another layer, and we go through this and we get another body system that we're working on, and we get some improvement, you might actually have come back to this and go, oh wow, I'm not breathing, or I remember a time when I stopped breathing. And so you go back and breathe for yourself and breathe through that and let it come through. So this is something that, again, we work on. It's a tool, but anytime that the breath gets stuck, and with that trauma, it's useful to work to let it go. Now, one last comment. If I'm in an instant moment, in other words, if I just was in a car accident, and of course that would have an impact on that, then what I would do while I'm sitting there waiting for the ambulance and whatever, if I'm really injured, I'm going to pause for a moment, take, and then start to breathe and just bring as much breath in and out and in and out and in and out as I possibly could. If my ribs were broken, I had something like that, then I would again breathe as much as I could in there and try to release as much of the holding as I possibly could. And if I had a broken leg, anything that would create that moment where I'm stopped breathing, is to go back and breathe and make sure you're breathing. And it's the best thing you can do for that moment of trauma. Obviously, if you have to get out of the way, if you're in the middle of the road and you have to get out of the way physically, then go do that. Okay, so that's a lesson. I know it can be tough to get into old stuff. Get your oils out. Use your fabulous Young Living essential oils to help process through some of these things. There is something called a feelings kit, and then there's also the freedom kit and things like that. So anyway, you can look into those. All right, I know it can be tough, but hang in there. Be brave. Happy wellness.